comment? I once interviewed Rav Amital, who was the founder of Meimad, the Dovish religious party, which never won an election. I don't even think it ever elected a city council person anyway. And before that, he was the Rosh Yeshiva of Gush Etzion, and a Holocaust survivor from Hungary, a Cookian. And I asked him, what does he understand as the meaning of being a Jew? And he answered me in a way that was totally surprising to me at the time, but actually made a lot of sense if one is a Cookian. And that is that the purpose of a Jew is to fully live your time. And the reason any of you who know anything about Rav Kook's theology will know that the basis for Cookian thinking is that all of creation is in a constant state of evolving toward ever greater states of perfection. In fact, Rav Kook was such an evolutionist, literally an evolutionist, that he saw Darwinism as the closest analog that science had provided to Kabbalistic thinking. And he said this at the time of the monkey trial. Well, that's just to give you some sense of the astonishing progressive thought that Rav Kook had, which didn't necessarily carry on to his successors. But I said I'm summing up. So, what I believe is relevant about that notion of to be a Jew means to fully live your time is that Judaism is a religion of history. It is a religion that believes that God reveals himself in one way or another through the unfolding experience of the Jews in history, which means that every era of Jewish history provides opportunities for engagement with history. To my mind, the great spiritual crime of the whole Haredi world, maybe with the exception of Chabad, but otherwise, the spiritual crime of the Haredi world is to run away from history and to try to go back to the last generation, to try to re-inhabit pre-Holocaust Jewish life, instead of recognizing that every era of Jewish history presents its spiritual challenges that need to be lived fully. Clearly, the spiritual challenge of our time is to make the gift that we receive, the gift of the return to the land, of the gathering of the exiles, of Jewish sovereignty and power, to make that gift worthy. This generation will decide whether that gift was worthy or whether it will be squandered. And I can say this unequivocally. If Israel fails, then whatever wonderful experiments, and I say this now without cynicism, whatever wonderful experiments of Jewish renewal occur in the diaspora will ultimately mean nothing, because Jewish history will be over for all practical purposes. The reason Jewish history will be over if Israel fails is that you can't have a people that sustained itself for 2,000 years on one vision, a vision of return to the land, as the core of its religious and national identity, all of its prayers ultimately leading in that direction, all of its holidays ultimately pointing in that direction, to then have that fantasy fulfilled under the most extraordinary circumstances of the 20th century. And then for it to simply fritter away because the Jewish people wasn't serious enough about making a go of the return to the land. So we will undergo such a shock of failure that we will not recover from. It will be the death blow of the Jewish people. Yes, you will continue to have Borough Park, and you will continue to have pockets of Jewish renewal, and there will be wonderful Jewish literature written very moving Jewish literature, really, about the tragedy of the Jewish people. But for all practical purposes, nobody sane will want to commit their children to this failed story. That's my feeling. And that's why, in the end, I feel that what Rav Avital said, that to be a Jew means to live your time, means that we have no choice. We can't escape into either Haredism or diasporism. Those are not legitimate Jewish spiritual alternatives. As far as I'm concerned, the only legitimate Jewish spiritual alternative of this time, and it's a very big statement. The only legitimate Jewish spiritual alternatives of this time are those expressions of Jewishness that have some form of relationship with Israel, whatever that is. It could be the diaspora, it could be communities of renewal. If there is no sense of responsibility, of nourishment from Israel, no sense of mutuality with Israel, those communities, as far as I'm concerned, have cut themselves off from the source of Jewish vitality. Fortunately, I think most Jewish communities will not, and I think we are going to prevail. But it really does depend on conversations like this beginning to happen in earnest and developing this further. So let's open the floor.